Have you ever wondered why there are so many different lengths of fly rods out there? I mean, I know fly rod companies got to make a buck, but this many different lengths is kind of overkill, isn't it? Well, not exactly. Fly rod length actually has a direct impact on fly rod performance and the different ways that you can most effectively use that fly rod. Shorter rods tend to be a little bit more accurate since they produce tighter loops. Longer rods can help you reach further and cast further with less effort. But what exactly are those trade-offs? When would you want a short rod versus a long rod? Keep listening to today's episode of Untangled, and I will walk you through everything you need to know about fly rod length. This is Untangled, fly fishing for everyone. Presented by Ventures Fly Company. Hey everybody, welcome to it. This is Untangled and I am your host, Spencer Durant. For those of you who are concerned that maybe I just only have one shirt or I seem to record all these episodes in one day, because I noticed today that I'm wearing the same shirt that I've worn in like 3 or 4 recent episodes. It's just like the only shirt that doesn't make me look fat. That's why I wear it on camera. So a little embarrassing admission there to start the show off. But if you listen to the show, you don't even worry about that. So this is really only for the YouTube viewers who we do dearly appreciate. We really do. We appreciate all the listeners, viewers of the show. I do especially. It's just tons of fun to get to connect with y'all and start to know some of you folks. And it's been a lot of fun doing this show. This is episode 52. So that's like a year's worth of episodes now. It's kind of crazy to think about. I've been doing it for that long that people are still willing to listen to me yammer on about fly fishing. And speaking of yammering on about fly fishing, we've got some interesting things to get to today. We're going to be talking all about some of the different guides and ebooks that we offer here at VFC, how to effectively fish really deep holes and runs, how to identify hook sizes and how to organize your flies, 10-foot versus 9-foot rods, and the best fly rods for overgrown creek fishing. So we've got quite a bit to get into, but before we get into our short questions, I need to remind y'all about our wonderful big time giveaway here at VFC. We are giving away 1,000 flies. That's right. You heard me correctly. We're giving away 1,000 flies. 5 lucky winners are going to win an ultimate collection from VFC, and that includes 200 of our flies. To be eligible to win, all you've got to do is visit the link in the podcast description to enter your email so we can notify you if you win. If you subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, you will earn an extra 5 entries. If you share any of the posts about this giveaway on social media, and they should be out there, you will get an extra 25 entries, and that is good for every video that you share on each platform. So that's an opportunity to increase your odds a whole bunch. I would take advantage of that. This giveaway lasts until December 9th at 11:59 in the PM, and winners will be notified on December 10th and announced in our weekly VFC email. So if you're maybe behind on your fly tying, or you don't enjoy fly tying, or you just want 200 free flies, I would get right on entering this little giveaway, but wait to do it until after you've listened to today's episode of Untangled. All right, folks. Appreciate you sticking with me through that. Let's jump right into the short questions and get cracking on the show for this week. Our first one, Keith from Missouri writes in, says, how do I obtain the guide for nymphing? Also the guide for picking the right fly. Keith is asking about a couple of the different guides that we have here. We do some ebooks, some pocket nymphing guides. We have a few different resources in addition to our blog, that's just blog.venturesflyco.com, and the YouTube channel where we have our beginning fly tying masterclass, which Alex did an outstanding job with. So if you're interested at all in fly tying, especially since it's the winter now, and a lot of us are tying instead of fishing because who wants to fish when it's 2 degrees outside, I would highly recommend you check out the beginning fly tying masterclass. I'll throw a link to that in the podcast description as well. We've got our beginning fly fishing masterclass, which we are still producing and still pumping out new episodes of, and folks seem to be really enjoying that. So we have all of those resources, but we also do, like I said, we do some ebooks and some pocket guides. The specific ones that Keith asked about is a pocket guide for nymphing that Alex put together for our nymphing episode a few episodes ago. I think it was like episode 47, maybe. I'll put a link to the episode in the podcast description as well. And I will link the pocket nymphing guide in there. It's just a great way. If you're really new to nymphing, it's just all the little strategies laid out there that should help you succeed. And then we also have a guidebook on how to pick the right fly. That one's pretty in-depth, and it goes through how to know what flies you need, how to match the hatch, how to look in your box, look in the river, and know what flies are most likely going to catch some trout. So that's all there. I'll leave links in the podcast description. And thanks for sending that question on into us, Keith. And our next short question, Bev from Colorado writes in, says, although I've been fly fishing several years, I've yet to understand how my fellow anglers can identify various hook sizes. Yes, I can tell the difference between a size 8 and 16, but when someone says tie on a number 18 hare's ear, I can narrow it down to about 3 hook sizes, but still can't pick that fly out of my box. It's my understanding that the size of the gap determines the size of the hook, but obviously you can't see the gap when searching your fly box for a specific size. I understand that there are different lengths of shanks as well, and that can make a fly look larger than the gap of the hook would determine. Sadly, I have yet to find any educational materials out there that teach you how to determine fly sizes. I really enjoy your podcast. Keep up the good work. Bev, thank you for the question. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. Really, so I dug into this a little bit too, and I know Alex dug into it. There's an episode in our fly tying masterclass about hooks and hook sizes. There really is no universal standard hook size chart out there that anybody adheres to. It's really frustrating because, like you mentioned, you've got some that have longer shanks and shorter shanks and extra fine wire and heavy wire and barbs and no barbs and upsize and down eyes and straight eyes. And there's all sorts of different variations that can go into making that hook look different than it actually is. And even hook gap, like you mentioned, Bev, that's not a guaranteed way to determine hook size, unfortunately. Tim Flagler, who I've learned to tie, I learned to tie basically from Tim Flagler's videos and Jack Dennis's books. So I owe a great deal of gratitude to Tim's wonderful fly tying videos. But he even says in one of his videos about hooks, he says, quote, if there's any one factor that determines hook size, it's probably the hook gap, but even that isn't a true measurement. What you really need to know is that hooks are assigned a number by the manufacturer to indicate their size. So there is really no universal way to identify them. That's probably why those educational materials you're talking about, Bev, they just don't exist because there is no universal way to identify them. So my best advice for you, and this is something that I did, organize your fly box based on size. And then when someone says, hey, tie in a size 18, you'll automatically know where your 18s are. And then, so that'll help you start to recognize size just by looking at them. The other thing I did that really helped me identify hook size was I did start tying my own. And it's a lot easier once you've been tying flies to say, oh yeah, that's an 18, that's a 16, that's a 12. It's a lot easier to tell the difference between those smaller ones if you're working with the hooks on a much more consistent basis. So I would recommend learning to tie, organizing your fly box by the size of the hooks so that you can start to recognize flies based on their size. And this is something that takes some time. I thought about this question. I thought about this when you sent a question in, Bev. And I was like, well, shoot, how long did it take me? And it probably took me a couple of years, too, to figure out, even before I started tying, it took me a couple of years to figure out, oh, this is what this is. And this is what an 18 looks like. So I think it's just something that comes with time as well. But thank you. That was a really good question. I appreciate it. And with that, folks, we are going to dive right into the meat of this week's show. First question on the show this week comes from North Carolina. Alex writes in and says, I have a river that I love to dive and fish. There is one specific area that is like 15 feet deep and has a rock shelf at the bottom. Every time I go there camping, I go swimming and I scout out where the most populated parts of the water are. For most of the day, the big browns sat under this rock about 15 feet deep. Is there a method to get a fly deeper down in front of those fish? Or do you wait till later in the day, like dusk, for the fish to come out and feed? Also, the rock is hard to reach from most angles because one side is 15 foot deep, and the other side where you fish from has a big slow pool in front of it, or fast flowing water where you would wade. So without seeing the pool, I can't really answer how I would approach it, unfortunately. But I can certainly speak to how I would fish a deep run like that. So that's what we're going to focus on. First off, though, Alex, I think that's a really genius idea to dive and get a look at the layout. That actually sounds like a ton of fun. Now I want to start doing that. I think we're going to have to buy a VFC snorkel now for me. So, Alex, if you're listening, VFC snorkel, that's on my Christmas list. Thank you. Oh, I would just say, though, be cautious-ish about if this is a really popular picnic and camping spot, like you say, and maybe it's only like your spot, maybe you don't see other folks there, but if it's popular, it might be really tough to get those fish to eat. Generally, spots like that are easy to access and really popular, the fishing's usually terrible just because it's been fished out. So that might be kind of tough, but chances are big fish like the ones you're talking about, the really big ones that are sitting down there, they're only going to come out to eat maybe once or twice a day, and they're likely going to fill up quickly on a large meal because, again, trout want to spend the least amount of energy that they have to for the maximum amount of food. That's why I love buffets, right? You go in, you pay your $25 or whatever it is, and then you eat like it's a sin. Like you sinfully eat so much food, but you got your daggum money's worth out of it, and all you had to do was get up and go to the buffet a couple of times. That is efficiency right there. And yeah, I packed on a few pounds from buffets, but guess what? Well, actually, it wasn't worth it. I don't know why I'm getting defensive about buffets, but dadgummit, I love buffets so much. I was talking about fly fishing, wasn't I? So these big brown trout, they're likely going to come out and fill up on that big meal really quickly. Usually it's going to be other trout, really big aquatic insects like crawdads, or even mice. If there are crawdads in that river, I would highly suggest fishing one of those. They're a favorite meal for trout. I've got a river near me where there's tons of crawdads in it, and the fish just love when I throw crawdad patterns out there. So definitely keep that as an option. You do have a couple of options to get your flies down deep, however. Your first is a long leader and probably some split shot to help it sink down. And it's 15 feet deep, so you're going to need a really long leader that can be very clunky to cast. I'm just warning you right now. You might need to step up to like a 6 weight to really effectively cast it. Your 5 can do it. The 6 will help, especially if you have to put a lot of split shot on and a heavy fly to get it down. If the current's pretty fast, you will either need a lot of split shot to sink your fly quicker, or you're going to need to cast very far upstream of the hole so that your flies have time to sink by the time they're in front of where those fish are hanging out. Your second option here is to use a sink tip fly line, and that will help you either dead drift or retrieve a streamer. Dead drifting can be really tricky on a sink tip fly line. It can be done, but I wouldn't recommend it. Personally, I've found it a lot more effective to dead drift on a long leader and floating line. That just seems to work way better for me. If you are to use a sink tip fly line, I would try to strip that streamer back towards you through the deep hole. They don't have to be big strips either. You can go between the short, quick jerks and long ones. It's really just change your retrieve up until you find something that works. It gets one of those fish to come out and crush that fly. Your last option for luring big fish out of there would be a mouse fly at night. Browns especially will go for that. It's probably not something you can do right now because it's cold. And I don't know if the mice are still running in December, but I would recommend doing that during the summer months. Go out there and do it if you can. So hopefully that helps you out there, Alex. If you've got any more questions, please don't hesitate to reach back out. Alrighty, folks. Sean from Tennessee is going to be the springboard for our Big topic of discussion today, talking about fly rod lengths. Sean got a wonderful question into us. He wrote in and said, I love the show and listen to every new episode. On my drive to work, thanks for what you guys are doing. It's been very helpful since I only started fly fishing a couple of years ago. My question is, I'm a pretty short guy, only 5'3", which really affects my fishing, especially while wading. Would there be any advantage for me to pick up a 10-foot rod instead of the 9'5" that I have? Our main trout river here on the border of Georgia and Tennessee is a tailwater and it's very wide. It is not the most conducive river to wade because of the rock formations. My thought is that a 10-foot rod will help me get the fly out further to some of the areas that I can't reach by wading. Sean, this is a really solid question. Yeah, I love it. Anytime I get to talk about fly rods, man, I'm going to jump all over this. So I hope you understand what can of worms that you just opened, because I mean, you can ask Alex in Berkeley, man. We just did a few little design tweaks. So the fly flinger y'all are going to see here coming out soon-ish, and I think they were sick of listening to me talk about rods after that. Oh, anyways, we actually do have an entire episode that is focused just on fly rods, and I'll link that in the podcast description so that if you have any other rod-related questions, you can just go ahead and get the answers there. But before we get into this, I do just want to reiterate to everybody listening, I've reviewed gear for better part of a decade now. I've been reviewing different gear, and I have relationships with a lot of the big gear manufacturers. That said, those manufacturers have never paid me a dime. I've been paid by magazines and websites. That's how I've been able to make my money. I've even written a negative review about rods from one of the biggest rod makers here in America. They put one out that I didn't think was up to snuff, and I let them know. So my opinions about fly rods, and we talked about fly rods in last week's episode too, in episode 51, it's 100% me. They're not paying me to say any of this stuff. This is all what I think, and this is what I think is going to help beginners as well. These are my opinions as an independent gear junkie. Yes, the VFC pays me, of course, but I believed in VFC's gear well before I joined the team. So it just kind of worked out. I wouldn't have joined a team if we had stuff that I didn't believe in. So you're getting real opinions from me. They're not swayed by the big companies. I want that to all be above board. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about rod length and the impact that it has on your ability to present your flies. The most common rod length is 9 feet. That's a really good balance between reach and line speed. Now, line speed, for those who don't know, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's how fast your line moves through the air. Generally, a higher line speed means that you can cast farther, but you have to know how to cast for this to be helpful. That's the big thing I got to reiterate through all of this is different rods will help you do different things, but you have to have good casting mechanics before you're going to be able to take advantage of those benefits from different rod lengths. So to take Sean's question here and really just answer it, there's 5 main things that you are going to notice if you decide you are going to go for a 10-foot rod when compared to what you will experience if you're fishing a standard 9-footer. Right, the first one is that higher line speed. Mentioned that just a second ago. Your longer fly rod is a longer lever in the casting process, so it increases how quickly your fly line moves through the air. You've got a little bit more oomph to put in so that line's going to run through the air a little bit faster. You will notice that you can throw longer casts with a 10-foot rod. Again, only if you already know how to cast. With the higher line speed that a 10-foot rod generates, you can certainly make longer casts with less effort, but you need a solid foundation of casting skills before that can happen. If you can't effectively cast, the distance difference you'll see between a 9-foot and 10-foot rod is going to be negligible. You are going to see a loss of accuracy. 10-foot rods are not as accurate as 9-foot rods by and large, because the longer your fly rod is, the bigger loops you're going to throw when you're casting, and bigger loops are less accurate than tight ones. When I'm referring to loops, I'm referring to the loop that your fly line makes in the air as you're casting. So an 8-foot rod will often be inherently more accurate than a 9-foot rod. When you up your length, you are going to notice a drop in accuracy. This might not be huge depending on what rod you pick, but you are going to see that. I've got two 10-foot 3-weights that I like to fish, and the more expensive of the two, the one that's built better, that uses better materials, that uses stronger and more stable materials, is a lot more accurate than the cheaper one, but they're both still nowhere near as accurate as my 9 or even my 8-foot 3-weights. I've got a little 8-foot 3-weight, and that thing is like a laser. It's so accurate. It's tons of fun. You're also going to notice that a 10-foot rod will have heavier swing weight. Now, swing weight could be a really complex topic to dive into. If you are a nerd about physics, then I would definitely dive into it. But for those of us who aren't, read me, what it boils down to is how heavy your rod feels while you're casting. Rods with a low swing weight, they have more of their mass located towards the butt of the rod, so less of it is out away from you. So that reduces the inertia needed to initiate a cast, so it feels lighter in hand. Longer rods by design will have more mass located away from the butt of the rod, which will increase how heavy your rod feels while casting. For some anglers, this can be a deal breaker. For me, it really is something that I notice in rods if I'm fishing all day long. Rods with a low swing weight are a priority for me because they are a lot more pleasant to cast, but I wouldn't call it a huge deal breaker. I've got some older rods that have a pretty heavy swing weight, and they're tons of fun. I fish bamboo. I build bamboo rods as well, and they've got really heavy swing weights, but I still fish them because they're tons of fun. So that's one of those things that can be a deal breaker, but it doesn't have to be. The last thing that you're going to notice, difference between your 9-foot and your 10-foot rods, your 10-foot rod is going to give you much better line management and mending, because with all that extra reach you get in a 10-foot rod, you are going to have a much easier time of picking fly line up and moving it, which is the basic principle of a mend. And in theory, you're going to have a better line management just in general because you have more rod to help move the line where you need it to be. You can reach out and dead drift more effectively with a 10-foot rod, and a 10-foot rod can even help you make some sustained anchor casts, which are the foundation for spey casting. And you can even do that with a single-handed rod. So there's a little bit more versatility in the 10-footer. So we've gone through the pros and cons. Well, what should Sean do? Should he go ahead and just pick that 9-footer, or should he go for the 10? Well, I would recommend a 10-foot rod in his case because it sounds like it would help. Now, it's not going to fix any massive issues that you have, Sean. You can reasonably cast your 9-foot rod as far as you can cast your 10, but you will work less to cast your 10-foot rod that same distance. If you have a solid grasp of casting mechanics and you can effectively roll cast, then I think it makes sense for you to jump up in length and enjoy the benefits of the longer rod. Now, if you're still struggling with casting at all, work to master it first before you upgrade your rod. I can't stress that enough. It's going to help. It's going to help a ton. We have a video just about roll casts as well as casting in general in our beginning masterclass that I'll link in the podcast description for you. Now, my personal opinion here on all of this is as follows. I actually really love 10-foot rods on smaller creeks and streams because it is so much easier to use them to dead drift a dry dropper rig through pocket water. And that's a lot of what I fish, especially here in Wyoming. I have a 9-foot 9 3-weight that I have been fishing pretty religiously here since since summer started. And I adore it. It's so good at just reaching and drifting. I love it. So in that instance, my longer rod is wonderful. But if I'm fishing a larger river, even with a dry dropper combo, I almost always stick with my 9-foot rod because they're a lot more accurate and it's so much more pleasant to cast than a 10-footer, in my opinion. I just find the 9-footer is a lot more enjoyable to cast. You might feel completely different, but that's where I'm at on things. So hopefully, Sean, that answers your question. And if you need anything else cleared up on this topic, please do not hesitate to reach on out. Alrighty, folks, we are just cruising right along here in the show this week, aren't we? Well, Glenn from Massachusetts is going to take us on our next question. Writes in and says, I'm a very novice fly fisher. Your podcast is so helpful and informative. Thank you. My question is, I'm fishing a smaller river in northern Massachusetts, very overgrown with lots of tree limbs over the river. Always get my fly snagged. I have a 9-foot 5-weight rod. Would it be better to buy a 6 or 6.5 foot rod? River is stocked, but nothing too big is in the river. Thank you so much. Glenn, great to hear from you. And thank you. Thank you a ton. I really, really appreciate those kind words of yours. I'm glad the podcast is helping you out. So what you're talking about here is it's one of the best use cases for shorter rods. It's kind of my thing. If y'all have been listening to the show for a while, and especially if you listen to our fly rod episode, I kind of tell people to quit trying to buy so many small fly rods because they'll get into it and they'll love it and they'll be like, oh, I need this 7-foot 3-weight for small streams, and I need this 8-weight for the carp, and I need all these things, and they just start to. And I'm not like I'm a gear junkie. I've got almost 40 fly rods that I personally own. Okay, those are not review rods that I have that are still sitting in when I've got a few review rods that I still need to fish. I have a problem with how many fly rods I own. It's an issue. Hashtag more fly rods than friends. It's true. So I'm not hating on folks buying new gear. That would be a really weird thing to hate on. What's frustrating is I see so many folks thinking that when they go to buy these little rods, that it's going to magically fix the issues that they have. And that more often than not is nothing about the length of the rod. It's all about their ability to present their flies, and they just lack the refined presentation, because you can still fish a 9-foot 5-weight virtually anywhere that you're going to fish your little 3-weight. Now, 3-weight in the hands of somebody who knows what they're doing is going to be a lot more delicate. It's going to give you those softer presentations, but you kind of have to know what you're doing for that first. And that's why I always caution folks, like, pump the brakes a little bit, get proficient with your 9-foot 5-weight, understand what it's doing. And then once you understand where your presentation is lacking, because that 5-weight line, it's going to land harder than a 3-weight line. That's just basic physics, right? It weighs more. It's going to hit the water harder. And if you're in a very clear, very small stream where you can't spook the fish, that matters. That matters quite a bit. So I always say to folks, do your best with your 9-foot 5-weight first. Then once you realize where your deficiencies are, you buy rods to sort of make that up. That's why, I've got a whole bunch of different little creek rods that I use, but I didn't go about buying those until, well into my fly fishing career. I fished my dad's 9-foot 5-weight that I borrowed / stole from him. I fished that for a decade, I think, before I bought any new rod. So you can certainly get away with it, and you can do it. And I think that was the right progression. Now, a decade's a long time to go. I was a cheapskate for a while, and I was so adamant, like, I don't need another rod. I could do it all with this one. And then I fished a different rod. I think it was a 4-weight was the first rod that I fished. It wasn't a 5. And it changed my world at that point. So I was like, oh yeah, I need this. And then it started me down this path of 40 fly rods. And, here I am talking about fly rods on a podcast. So it was all well and good for me. But I think it was a good progression for me because I was able to understand what these shorter rods do. So that's a really long-winded way of me saying, yes, this is a really good use case, because if you're in a place like this, it kind of makes sense to go shorter. However, 6-foot and 6.5-foot rods are really, really short. You will be surprised by how short they are. It's kind of frightening how short they are, actually. I'm a much bigger fan of going to 7 and 7.5-foot rods for really small streams, even with a lot of overhang. I own a 6-foot 4-weight bamboo and a 6.5-foot 2-weight graphite rod, and I use that 6.5-footer way more, even though it's a 2-weight. I use it way more than that 6-foot 4-weight bamboo, because 6 foot is just really, really stinking short. So I would suggest picking up a 7 or 7.5 foot rod for the kind of fishing that you're describing here, Glenn. The reason that you're going to want something shorter in this instance is twofold. It will help you avoid tangles and give you a little bit more casting room. And in theory, it is going to help you generate more accurate casts in tight spaces. So remember what we talked about earlier, where we discussed what makes fly rods accurate and not accurate. Part of that is the length. So a shorter rod will be more accurate, so it can help if you not only need to avoid branches above you, but also if you have tight windows for making a really good cast as well. So thank you for sending that question in, Glenn. And again, if you need any more information or feedback on that, please don't hesitate to write on in. And with that, folks, we are done with the question part of the show, but don't worry, because there's still more of the show to come. We're going to do the thought of the week, and then it will be time to say goodbye. But stick around. You do not want to miss this week's thought of the week. Oh, folks, I want to talk this week about one aspect of winter fishing that I really, really enjoy, and that is fishing midge hatches. I know, right? You're kind of like, well, what are you talking about? Well, I wrote a story actually a while ago for Hatch Magazine about this, and I'll throw the link in the description for you so y'all can read it if you want. But what I find really, really fun about fishing midges, yeah, I know they're small. All right, at least it's not tricos, okay? Alex and I have this ongoing debate. He hates tricos, and I love them, but I enjoy fishing small flies. The midges are, yeah, they're small, but they're tons of fun. They're interestingly consistent throughout the colder months, too. If you get, at least where I am, if you can get a day in the upper 20s, low 30s, you're probably going to find midges hatching somewhere. I've noticed in the winter, they tend to like the little bit slower water. Sometimes they'll even hatch in some of the riffly stuff. But the slower water, kind of the slacks and the eddies at the edges of runs and pools, they really, really like. And you can have a banner day dry fly fishing in the dead of winter. I used to do this a ton when I lived back in Utah. I'd fish the lower Provo because the midge hatches in the winter are fantastic. And I would be fishing dries all day while everybody around me is fishing nymphs. Now, the nymph anglers caught more fish than I did. I'll give them that. But I had a lot more fun. No, I don't know if I had more fun, but I really did enjoy it. So it's a unique challenge. You've got to size your tippet down. You've got to fish these smaller flies, and your presentation's got to be really, really good. So it's a great way to challenge yourself, especially if you don't want to just tie flies all winter. You still want to get out and fish. Look for some midge hatches because the challenge it presents will help you refine your dry fly game. And I credit this winter midge fishing with improving my dry fly fishing tenfold. I would not be the dry fly angler I am today, which I'm not bragging about my dry fly skills. I'm competent at it is where I would rate myself. But I wouldn't be competent at it today if I didn't spend so much time in the winter fishing the little midge dry flies. And yeah, part of it is I just need to get out and not have cabin fever. And so part of it is that. But the other part of it is it's just a lot of fun to throw dries. I've always loved fishing dries. That's been my preferred way to fish for a while. So I would challenge y'all, take a look at some midge fishing this winter. It's something that's worth doing, and I think you might find you'll enjoy it more than you expected. So that's our thought of the week. And with that, folks, we're going to wrap things up. This is a great episode. Had a lot of fun talking about it. And don't forget the giveaway. We're giving away 1,000 flies. We're going to make 5 people's lives a ton better this holiday season with those flies. So don't forget to click the link in the podcast description. Go sign up for that giveaway. Share this. Share the post. Just spread the word. We want everybody to have their chance at getting these free flies. And until next week, everybody, get out in the water, get some fishing done, and tie lines.